Maya Chen walked through the gleaming halls of the Confederation Academy, her footsteps echoing against the crystal walls. Students from dozens of worlds moved past her, their alien forms casting strange shadows in the artificial sunlight that streamed through the transparent dome overhead. She clutched her data pad tighter and tried to ignore the whispers that followed her. The Academy sat on Nexus Prime, a planet specially built for learning. It housed the brightest minds from across the galaxy. Maya was one of only 12 humans who had ever been accepted here in the past 200 years. Most days she felt like a mistake that somehow slipped through the admission process. In the central courtyard, a group of Zephyrian students floated above the ground, their silver skin shimmering as they shared thoughts without speaking. Their large dark eyes turned toward Maya as she passed. She heard their mental laughter like distant chimes, though they tried to keep their telepathic conversation private. The universal translator in her ear picked up fragments. The human girl, and so primitive. Maya had grown used to it. Humans were considered the least impressive species in the Confederation. They had no special powers, no amazing abilities that made other races stop and stare. Humans could not read minds like the Zephyrians. They could not manipulate energy with their thoughts like the crystal beings called Vorthak. They could not share a collective consciousness like the insect-like creatures from Kepler 438b. She entered the advanced stellar physics classroom and took her usual seat in the back. The room was designed to accommodate many different body types. Some seats hung from the ceiling for the gas-dwelling nebulans. Others were filled with water for the aquatic oceanic. Maya sat in a simple chair made for bipedal species like herself. Professor Zexathul glided into the room, his tall Zephyrian form moving with grace. His skin shifted from silver to gold, showing his mood was pleasant. Maya had learned to read the basic color changes that Zephyrians displayed. It was one of the few skills that impressed her classmates, though they still considered it crude compared to actual telepathy. Today we will discuss the theoretical collapse of binary star systems, Professor Zexthul announced. His voice resonated directly in their minds rather than through sound. The mathematical models require precise calculation and deep intuitive understanding of cosmic forces. He projected a complex hologram into the center of the room. Two stars danced around each other, slowly spiraling inward. Numbers and equations floated around the image, showing the forces at work. Who can tell me the primary factor that determines the collapse timeline? The professor asked. Several hands shot up. A Vorthak student named Crystalline Song of Seven answered first. Her voice sounded like musical notes. The mass differential between the primary and secondary stars calculated through gravitational resonance equations. Correct, Professor Zexthul said, his skin shifting to a brighter gold. And what secondary factors must we consider? More hands rose. A student from the Kepler hive mind spoke next, their voice carrying the weight of 1,000 minds thinking as one. Magnetic field interactions, stellar wind pressure, and rotational momentum transfer. Maya raised her hand slowly. She had been studying this problem for weeks and had found something interesting in the data, something that the standard models seemed to miss. Professor Zexthul noticed her raised hand but hesitated. Yes, human Maya? The way he said her name always made her feel small. Not Maya, but human Maya, as if her species was more important than her individual identity. I think there might be another factor, Maya said, standing up as was required when addressing a professor. The data from the Andromeda binary collapse last century shows irregularities that don't match the standard models. The classroom grew quiet. Maya felt dozens of alien eyes focusing on her. She pulled up her own calculations on her data pad and projected them into the shared space. Look at the timeline here, she said, pointing to a graph. The collapse happened 37 days earlier than all the models predicted. But if you factor in the chaotic resonance from the asteroid field that was passing through the system, the timing matches perfectly. Professor Zexthul's skin shifted to a duller shade. Maya knew this meant displeasure or confusion. He studied her projection for a long moment while the class waited. Human Maya, he said finally, your suggestion lacks the sophistication needed for true cosmic understanding. The chaotic elements you mention are precisely what we filter out to achieve accurate predictions. Chaos is the enemy of science. Several students made sounds that Maya had learned were equivalent to laughter in their species. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment, but she pressed on. But what if the chaos is part of the system? She asked. What if trying to filter it out is why the models keep being wrong? The professor's skin now showed flashes of red, which Maya knew meant annoyance. Human intuition is limited, he said carefully. Your species has not yet evolved the mental capabilities to grasp the elegant patterns that govern the universe. Chaos appears meaningful to primitive minds because they cannot perceive the underlying order. Maya sat down slowly. Around her, she felt the mental equivalent of nodding from the telepathic species. The other students agreed with their professor. Humans were too simple to understand real science. After class, Maya walked alone to the observation deck. Through the massive transparent walls, she could see the stars of the galactic core. Each point of light represented systems with their own stories, their own civilizations. Earth was out there somewhere, a tiny blue dot that most of the galaxy considered insignificant. She thought about her home world and the people she had left behind. Earth was not as advanced as the other worlds in the Confederation. Humans still used primitive chemical rockets to reach their own moon. They fought wars over resources that other species could create easily with technology. Their planet was unstable, with volcanoes, earthquakes, and storms that regularly destroyed entire cities. But Maya remembered something her grandmother had told her before she left for the academy. "Child," the old woman had said, "never forget that we come from a world that has tried to kill us every single day for millions of years, and we're still here." Maya pressed her hand against the cool surface of the observation window. Maybe Professor Zexthal was right. Maybe humans were too primitive to understand the elegant patterns of the universe. But as she looked out at the stars, she wondered if there might be a different kind of understanding. A kind that came not from filtering out chaos, but from learning to dance with it. She did not know that in just a few days everything would change. A crisis would come that would require exactly the kind of thinking that made her professors shake their heads in disappointment. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the primitive way was the only way that worked. For now, though, Maya stood alone with the stars and wondered if she would ever truly belong in this place of wonders. She did not realize that belonging was not the point. The point was surviving, and humans, she would soon discover, were very good at surviving. The emergency alarm started at 0347, Academy Standard Time. Maya jerked awake in her small dormitory room as red lights flashed and a voice spoke in 17 different languages through the communication system. By the time the message reached the human translation, Maya was already pulling on her uniform. "All students and faculty report to Emergency Assembly Hall immediately. Priority 1 crisis response protocol is now in effect." Maya had never heard a Priority 1 alert before. During her 2 years at the academy, they had practiced emergency procedures, but always for theoretical scenarios. As she ran through the corridors with hundreds of other students, she could feel the tension in the air. Even without telepathic abilities, she could sense the fear. The emergency assembly hall was vast enough to hold every being on Nexus Prime. Students clustered together by species while faculty members moved between them, their expressions grave. Maya found herself standing with the other human students, a small group that looked lost among the crowd of aliens. Chancellor Vrexon, an ancient Zephyrian whose skin had turned a permanent silver with age, floated to the center of the hall. When she spoke, her words appeared directly in every mind present. 3 hours ago, we received a distress call from mining colony Zerion 7, the Chancellor announced. The colony houses 50,000 beings from 23 different species. They are in immediate danger. A holographic display materialized above the Chancellor's head. It showed a massive asteroid field surrounding a small planet, but something was wrong with the image. The asteroids were moving in chaotic patterns, swirling like a deadly storm around the world. The star that Zerion 7 orbits has become unstable, Chancellor Vrexon continued. Solar flares of unprecedented magnitude are causing gravitational anomalies throughout the system. The asteroid field that once protected the mining operations is now threatening to destroy the colony. Maya stared at the display. She could see the problem immediately. The asteroids were not following predictable orbits anymore. They were bouncing off each other, creating a cascade of collisions that sent chunks of rock spinning in every direction. Some of those chunks were the size of mountains. We have 48 hours before the largest asteroids will impact the colony, the Chancellor said. After that, nothing on the planet's surface will survive. Professor Zexthal stepped forward, his skin showing the deep blue that indicated serious thought. I will lead the Zephyrian precognitive team, he announced. We will calculate the trajectory of every asteroid, and predict safe evacuation windows. Other professors quickly followed. The head of the Vorthak engineering department declared her intention to design energy shields that could deflect the incoming asteroids. The representative from the Kepler Collective stated that their hive mind would coordinate the evacuation of 50,000 beings across multiple species. Maya watched as the best minds in the galaxy organized themselves into response teams. Each group would use their species' greatest strengths to solve part of the problem. It was impressive and terrifying at the same time. Student volunteers will be organized into support teams, Chancellor Vrexon announced. Report to your designated professors for assignment. The assembly broke up into smaller groups. Maya followed the other humans toward Professor Darwin, an elderly oceanic who taught basic stellar navigation. His tank was mounted on a hovering platform so he could move among the air-breathing species. Human students, Professor Darwin said through his tank's speaker system. You will be assigned to data compilation and basic research support. Your role will be to organize information for the primary response teams. Maya felt her heart sink. Data compilation meant sitting in a room, sorting through reports and making charts. It was busy work, designed to make them feel useful without actually contributing to the solution. Professor, Maya said, raising her hand, could some of us work directly with the response teams? We might be able to help with problem solving. Professor Darwin's tentacles moved in a pattern that Maya recognized as gentle dismissal. Human students, your species has many fine qualities, but crisis response requires highly specialized thinking. You will be most helpful by supporting those who have the necessary mental capabilities. As the human students were led to their assigned work area, Maya heard fragments of conversation from the other teams. The Zephyrians were already deep in telepathic calculation, their minds linked together in a network that could process millions of trajectory possibilities. The Vorthak engineers were debating energy frequencies and harmonic resonances for their shield designs. The Kepler Collective was organizing evacuation schedules with the precision of a machine. The human work area was a small room filled with basic computer terminals. Maya and her fellow students were given access to the incoming data from Zirion 7 and told to organize it into useful formats for the response teams. For the first few hours, Maya tried to focus on her assigned task. She sorted reports about asteroid composition, colony population distributions, and available transportation resources. But as the data flowed past her screen, she began to notice things that bothered her. The Zephyrian predictions kept changing. Every hour they would announce a new set of calculations, each one different from the last. The asteroid movements were too chaotic for even their advanced precognitive abilities to track accurately. The Vorthak shield designs were elegant and powerful, but they required massive amounts of energy that the colony simply did not have. Even if they could build the shields, there was no way to power them for more than a few minutes. The Kepler Collective's evacuation plans were perfectly organized, but they assumed that transport ships could reach the colony safely. With asteroids flying in unpredictable directions, any ship entering the system was likely to be destroyed before it could rescue anyone. Maya looked at her data screen and felt a familiar frustration. The same feeling she had experienced in Professor Zexthol's class when she tried to explain the importance of chaos in stellar collapse. The advanced alien minds were trying to solve this crisis the same way they solved every problem, by finding elegant, sophisticated solutions that assumed the universe would behave in orderly, predictable ways. But Maya had grown up on Earth. She knew that the universe was not orderly or predictable. It was messy and chaotic and dangerous, and sometimes the only way to survive was to embrace the chaos instead of fighting it. She started working on her own calculations, using methods that her professors would probably call primitive. Instead of trying to predict exactly where each asteroid would go, she focused on probability zones and backup plans. Instead of designing perfect solutions, she looked for quick fixes that could be modified on the fly. As the hours passed and the official response teams struggled with their increasingly complicated solutions, Maya began to see a different path. A dangerous, messy, imperfect path that just might work. She was about to discover that sometimes being primitive was exactly what the situation required. 18 hours had passed since the crisis began, and Maya could see the panic starting to set in. The response teams were struggling with problems they had never encountered before. Every few hours, representatives from each group would report their progress to Chancellor Vrexon, and each report brought worse news. Maya watched the latest briefing through a live feed while she continued her data compilation work. Professor Zexthul stood before the Chancellor, his skin a worried shade of gray. "The gravitational anomalies are increasing in intensity," he reported. "Our precognitive calculations show 73 different possible futures, and they change every time we observe them. The chaos is unprecedented." Chancellor Vrexon's mental voice carried frustration. "What about the SHIELD project?" The Vorthic engineering leader stepped forward, her crystalline body dim with exhaustion. "The energy requirements exceed the colony's capacity by a factor of 12, she said. "Even if we could somehow generate enough power, the harmonic frequencies from the stellar flares interfere with our energy matrices." "And evacuation?" the Chancellor asked. The Kepler Collective representative spoke with the voice of 1,000 minds, but even their unity sounded strained. "We have calculated optimal evacuation routes and schedules for all 50,000 colonists. However, 17 transport ships have already been destroyed by asteroid impacts while attempting to reach the system. The remaining vessels are afraid to proceed." Maya watched the alien leaders struggle with their problem. Each team was brilliant, but they were all approaching the crisis in the same way, trying to create perfect solutions for an imperfect situation. They wanted to predict the unpredictable, control the uncontrollable, and bring order to chaos. She thought about Earth and all the disasters her people had survived. Earthquakes that struck without warning, volcanoes that changed the climate for years, tsunamis that wiped out entire coastlines. Humans had never been able to predict or control these disasters. They had learned something else, how to adapt. Maya made a decision that would change everything. She left her data terminal and walked to the main command center where the response teams were working. The room buzzed with activity as hundreds of the galaxy's best minds tried to solve an impossible problem. "Excuse me," Maya said, approaching Professor Zexthul. The Zephyrian looked down at her with surprise. "Human Maya, you should be in the data compilation area." "I have an idea," Maya said. "About Zerion 7. Professor Zexthul's skin shifted to show mild amusement. "Human Maya, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but this crisis requires solutions beyond your species' capabilities." "What if you're approaching it wrong?" Maya asked, her voice steady despite her nervousness. "What if instead of fighting the chaos, you used it?" The professor's skin darkened with displeasure. "That is precisely the kind of primitive thinking that prevents your species from advancing. Chaos cannot be used. It can only be controlled or eliminated." Maya pulled out her datapad and projected her own calculations into the shared workspace. Immediately, several alien students gasped at what they saw. Her models were not clean or elegant. They were messy, full of approximations and contingency plans. To the sophisticated minds around her, they looked like the work of a child. "This is what I think we should do," Maya said, pointing to her projection. "Instead of trying to predict where every asteroid will go, we create controlled explosions to redirect the biggest ones. We use the gravitational anomalies like slingshots to speed up the evacuation ships, and we don't try to save everyone with one perfect plan. We use dozens of imperfect plans that we can change as the situation develops." The command center fell silent. Maya could feel the mental equivalent of shocked staring from every telepathic species in the room. Professor Zexthul's skin cycled through several colors before settling on deep red. "This is barbaric," he said. "You are suggesting we deliberately cause more explosions in an already chaotic system. Your success probability is only 67%. That is completely unacceptable." "What's the success probability of our current plans?" Maya asked quietly. The silence that followed her question was answer enough. The elegant solutions were not working. Time was running out and the colony was still doomed. Chancellor Vrexon's voice cut through the tension. "What exactly are you proposing, human student?" Maya took a deep breath and began to explain her plan. It was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of one coordinated solution, she suggested breaking the problem into hundreds of smaller problems. Teams would work independently, adapting their approaches as conditions changed. Some efforts would fail, but others would succeed, and the successful methods could be quickly copied and modified. "You plant explosive charges on the 3 largest asteroids heading for the colony," Maya said, highlighting objects on her display. The explosions don't have to be precise. They just need to change the asteroid's paths enough to buy more time. She pointed to another part of her projection. Meanwhile, you use the gravitational anomalies to accelerate evacuation ships. It's dangerous, but ships can slingshot around the stellar disturbances to reach escape velocity faster than normal. And if the gravitational fields tear the ships apart? Asked the Vorthak engineer. Then you try a different approach, Maya said. You have backup plans. And backup plans for the backup plans. You don't put all your hope in one perfect solution. Professor Zexthal was shaking his head. This is madness. You cannot possibly coordinate so many variables simultaneously. Humans do it all the time, Maya said. It's called crisis management. When your world tries to kill you regularly, you learn to think fast and adapt quickly. The room erupted in debate. Some aliens were horrified by Maya's suggestion. Others were intrigued despite themselves. The argument might have continued for hours, but Chancellor Vrexon made a decision that shocked everyone. We will implement the human student's plan, she announced. Professor Zexthal's skin flashed bright red. Chancellor, this is highly irregular. A human student cannot possibly command a crisis response operation. Our conventional approaches have failed, the Chancellor replied. Perhaps it is time to try an unconventional one. Maya felt the weight of 50,000 lives settling on her shoulders. Around her, the most advanced species in the galaxy waited for instructions, from a primitive human girl who had grown up on a chaotic little world that most of them had never heard of, she thought. About her grandmother's words, we come from a world that has tried to kill us every day for millions of years, and we're still here. Maya began giving orders, and for the first time since the crisis began, things started to move fast. Maya stood in the center of the command room, surrounded by displays showing the chaos around Xerion 7. 17 different operations were running simultaneously, and she was coordinating all of them while her alien classmates watched in amazement and horror. Explosive Team Alpha. Your target asteroid is shifting course, Maya called out. Detonate charges now, even if placement isn't perfect. On the main screen, brilliant flashes lit up the asteroid field as the charges exploded. The massive rock tumbled off its collision course with the colony, but the explosion created dozens of smaller fragments spinning in new directions. Evacuation ships Beta and Gamma. New debris field incoming from your starboard side. Maya continued without missing a beat. Use emergency thrusters to swing around the gravitational anomaly at coordinates 4752. It'll slingshot you past the danger zone. Professor Zexthal watched her with growing amazement. How is she tracking so many variables? He whispered to Chancellor Vrexon. No single mind should be able to process this much chaos. Maya heard him but did not have time to respond. 3 more situations required her immediate attention. An evacuation ship had lost power and was drifting toward an asteroid. A second explosive team needed new targets as their original asteroids had collided with each other, and the stellar flares were intensifying, creating new gravitational distortions. Ship designation, Hope of Kepler. You have auxiliary power only, Maya said into her communication device. Do not attempt to restart main engines. Use your momentum to coast toward the nearest gravitational slingshot point. Evacuation ship Crystal Song will intercept you there. She turned to another team. Explosive Team Delta, forget your original targets. New priority asteroids are forming from the recent collision. I'm sending you coordinates now. What amazed the alien observers was not just that Maya could track so many problems at once, but how she made decisions. She did not calculate probabilities or run complex models. She looked at each situation for a few seconds, made a choice, and moved on. When her choices proved wrong, she adapted immediately. A Vorthak engineer approached her hesitantly. Human Maya, the energy calculations for the next slingshot maneuver show only a 43% success probability. What's the probability if the ship doesn't try the maneuver? Maya asked without looking away from her displays. 0%. The ship will be destroyed by debris. Then 43% is pretty good, Maya said. Tell them to go for it. The engineer's crystalline form dimmed with confusion. But the risk of doing nothing is worse, Maya interrupted. In crisis situations, good enough right now beats perfect too late. As the hours passed, Maya's unconventional approach began to show results. Ships that would have been destroyed by debris used gravitational anomalies to escape. Asteroids that would have crushed the colony were redirected by imprecise but effective explosions. The evacuation proceeded in fits and starts. with constant setbacks and quick recoveries. The alien students watched Maya work with growing fascination. She seemed to thrive in the chaos that paralyzed their more sophisticated minds. Where they saw overwhelming complexity, she saw patterns and opportunities. "Attention all teams," Maya announced. "The stellar flares are intensifying. We're about to lose communication with the inner evacuation zone for approximately 40 minutes. All teams switch to autonomous operation protocols. Make your own decisions based on local conditions. Do not wait for central coordination." Professor Zexthal's skin flashed with alarm. "You cannot seriously be suggesting that teams operate without central command. The probability of coordination failures increases exponentially." Maya finally turned to look at him directly. "Professor, what's the probability of success if all teams wait for orders they can't receive?" The Zephyrian's skin shifted through several colors as he processed this simple logic. "But without coordination, the chaos is going to happen whether we coordinate or not," Maya said. "The question is whether we're ready for it." She turned back to her communications. "All teams, remember your training. When in doubt, prioritize lives over equipment. When something doesn't work, try something else immediately. When you succeed, share your methods with other teams as soon as communication resumes." The command center watched as their displays went dark, showing only static from the Zarian 7 system. For 40 minutes they had no way of knowing what was happening. Maya used the time to analyze the data they had collected and plan for the next phase of the evacuation. When communication resumed, the reports that came flooding in told an incredible story. Teams had improvised solutions to problems no one had anticipated. They had modified their plans on the fly, adapted to changing conditions, and succeeded beyond all expectations. Evacuation. Ship Nebula's dream reporting. Successful pickup of 3,000 colonists. Using modified gravitational assist, came one report. Explosive. Team Gamma successfully redirected asteroid cluster using sequential detonation technique, came another. Emergency Rescue Team Alpha recovered survivors from disabled ship using improvised docking procedure, reported a third, as the final evacuation ships cleared the asteroid field. Chancellor Vrexen announced the incredible news. 47,812 colonists have been successfully evacuated. Casualties are minimal. The command center erupted in celebration, but Maya felt only exhaustion. She had been coordinating the crisis response for nearly 30 hours straight. As the adrenaline faded, she realized that everyone was staring at her. Professor Zexthal approached slowly, his skin showing colors Maya had never seen before. "Human Maya," he said quietly, "I must ask you a question. What kind of world creates minds that can function in such chaos?" Maya looked at him tiredly. "Earth," she said simply. "Tell us about Earth," Chancellor Vrexen requested, her mental voice carrying genuine curiosity for the first time. Maya thought about how to explain her home world to beings who had never experienced true chaos. Earth is a planet where the ground shakes without warning and cities fall down, where mountains explode and change the weather for years, where walls of water wash away everything in their path, where ice covers half the world for thousands of years, then melts and covers it with water instead. The alien students listened in stunned silence as Maya continued. "Humans don't survive on Earth because we're stronger or smarter than other species. We survive because we learn to expect disaster. We learn to make quick decisions with incomplete information. We learned that sometimes the only way forward is to try something risky and adapt when it doesn't work perfectly." Professor Zexthal's skin had turned a pale white. "Your entire species evolved under constant threat of extinction." "Not just threat," Maya said. "Actual extinction. It happened to us over and over again. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, plague, climate change. Each time, most humans died. But some survived. And the ones who survived were the ones who could adapt to impossible situations." She looked around the room at all the brilliant alien minds who had been paralyzed by a crisis that seemed chaotic and unpredictable. "You see chaos as the enemy of order," Maya said. "Humans learn to see chaos as just another part of the environment, something to work with instead of against." The command center remained silent as the implications of her words sank in. These advanced species, with their sophisticated abilities and elegant technologies, had never faced the kind of evolutionary pressure that forged humanity. They had perfected their capabilities in stable environments, While humans had perfected their ability to survive anything, Chancellor Vrexen spoke the words that everyone was thinking. "We have gravely underestimated your species." Maya nodded and walked toward the exit. She needed sleep, and tomorrow she had classes to attend. But she knew that something fundamental had changed. The galaxy was beginning to understand what Earth had created. Not a primitive species, but the ultimate survivors. Behind her, the alien students and faculty began the long process of rewriting everything they thought they knew about humans. 3 weeks after the Zerion 7 crisis, Maya noticed the changes everywhere. Students who had once ignored her now watched her with careful attention as she walked through the academy halls. Professors who had dismissed her ideas now asked for her opinions during class discussions. But it was not admiration she saw in their eyes. It was something closer to wariness. The first official change came during her advanced stellar physics class. Professor Zexthul, whose skin had remained a thoughtful shade of deep blue since the crisis, presented a new case study to the class. "Today we will examine the Zerion 7 evacuation," he announced. "Specifically, we will analyze the human approach to crisis management and its implications for our understanding of problem-solving methodologies." Maya shifted uncomfortably in her seat as the holographic display showed footage from the evacuation. She watched herself coordinating 17 different operations simultaneously, making split-second decisions that had saved thousands of lives. To her, it had felt like barely controlled chaos. To her classmates, it apparently looked like something else entirely. "Note how the human student processes multiple data streams without apparent strain," Professor Zexthul continued. "Where our minds seek to establish order and predictability, the human mind seems designed to function within disorder." A Zephyrian student raised her hand. "Professor, is this why humans appear so chaotic in their thinking patterns? Are their minds actually adapted for crisis situations?" "That," said Professor Zexthul, "is what we are trying to understand." After class, Maya found herself surrounded by students asking questions she did not know how to answer. How did she process so much information at once? How did she make decisions without calculating all the probabilities? How did her species develop these abilities? "I don't know," Maya told them honestly. "It's just how we think. When something bad happens, you deal with it. If your solution doesn't work, you try something else. You keep going until either the problem is solved or you're dead." The Vorthak student called Crystal Song of Seven made a sound like discordant chimes, but that approach seemed so random. "How do you know you're making the right choice?" "You don't," Maya said. "You make the best choice you can with the information you have, and you deal with the consequences. Right and wrong are less important than fast and adaptable." Maya could see that her answer disturbed them. These species had evolved in stable environments where right and wrong were clear, where problems had elegant solutions, where thinking could be careful and methodical. The idea of making critical decisions without certainty was alien to them. The real change in how the galaxy viewed humans began when the detailed reports from Zerion 7 reached the Confederation High Council. Maya learned about this from Chancellor Vrexen, who called her to a private meeting in her office. "The High Council has requested a full analysis of human capabilities," the Chancellor told her. "They want to understand how your species developed such unusual mental characteristics. Are we in trouble?" Maya asked. Chancellor Vrexen's mental voice carried complex emotions that Maya could not entirely identify. "That remains to be seen. The Council is concerned about what the Zerion 7 incident reveals about human potential." Over the following days, Maya learned what that concern looked like. Teams of xenopsychologists arrived at the academy to study human students. They ran tests, conducted interviews, and analyzed every aspect of human thinking patterns. Maya and her fellow humans found themselves treated like fascinating, but potentially dangerous specimens. The results of their studies spread through the Confederation like wildfire. Academic papers with titles like Crisis Adaptation in Human Cognitive Architecture and The Evolutionary Psychology of Disaster-Forged Sentience appeared in journals across dozens of worlds. The conclusions were startling. Maya read one of the papers in the Academy library, struggling with the complex scientific language. The summary was clear enough. Homo sapiens appears to be the only known sentient species that evolved under conditions of constant existential threat. This has resulted in cognitive adaptations that prioritize survival over optimization. speed over accuracy and adaptability over specialization. She showed the paper to her roommate, a gentle oceanic named Flowing Current of Wisdom. "They make us sound like we're dangerous," Maya said. "Are you?" Flowing Current asked, her tentacles moving in patterns of curiosity. "Your species survived challenges that would have destroyed any of ours. What does that make you?" Maya did not have an answer. She was beginning to understand that the question of human nature was more complex than she had realized. The galaxy was learning about Earth's history, and what they discovered frightened them. Earth's geological record showed extinction-level events occurring with terrifying regularity. Ice ages that lasted for millennia, volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun for years, asteroid impacts that destroyed entire ecosystems, climate changes that happened too fast for most species to adapt. Any other known species would have gone extinct within the first million years on your world, Professor Zexthal told Maya during a private consultation. Yet humans not only survived, but thrived. You turned a planet that should have been uninhabitable into the cradle of the galaxy's most adaptable species. "We just did what we had to do," Maya said. "Exactly," the professor replied, his skin showing colors of deep contemplation, "and that is what concerns the Council." The concern became clearer when Maya learned about the emergency sessions being held by the Confederation leadership. Reports leaked to the Academy about debates over humanity's role in galactic affairs. Some council members wanted to limit human expansion, arguing that a species designed for survival might become aggressive when resources grew scarce. Others wanted to study humans more intensively, hoping to understand and perhaps replicate their crisis management abilities. "They're afraid of us," Maya told her human classmates during one of their weekly gatherings. "They think we're too dangerous to be trusted." "Maybe they're right," said David Park, a human student studying engineering. "We are dangerous. We came from a world that spent 4 billion years trying to kill everything on it. We're the species that survived that, so what do we do?" asked Sarah Martinez, who studied xenobiology. Maya thought about the question for a long time. Finally, she realized the answer was simple. We do what humans always do. We adapt. The adaptation came in the form of a proposal that Maya presented to Chancellor Vrexen and the Academy leadership. If the galaxy was afraid of human unpredictability, humans would prove their value instead of trying to deny their nature. "Establish a human crisis response division," Maya suggested. "When disasters strike that are too chaotic for conventional solutions, send in the humans. We'll handle the impossible situations that paralyze other species." The proposal worked its way up through the Confederation bureaucracy with surprising speed. Within months, the first human crisis response teams were being formed. They would be called upon when normal methods failed, when situations were too unpredictable for elegant solutions, when survival required the kind of desperate creativity that only came from a species forged in chaos. Maya volunteered for the first team, along with many of her human classmates. They trained not in sophisticated technologies or elegant theories, but in rapid adaptation, creative problem-solving, and crisis coordination. They learned to embrace uncertainty instead of fighting it. On graduation day, Maya stood with her fellow students as Chancellor Vrexen addressed the assembled crowd. "Today we celebrate not just individual achievement, but the expansion of our understanding," the Chancellor said. "We have learned that the universe is more diverse than we imagined, and that strength comes in many forms." Maya looked out at the crowd of alien faces and saw something new in their expressions. Not fear exactly, but respect. A recognition that humans brought something unique to the galaxy, the ability to function when everything else failed. After the ceremony, Professor Zexthal approached Maya one final time. His skin showed the golden hue of satisfied understanding. "I owe you an apology, human Maya," he said. "I told you that your species lacked the sophistication for true cosmic understanding." "I was wrong." "You were right about one thing," Maya replied. "Humans don't understand the cosmos the same way other species do. We understand it as a dangerous place where survival requires constant adaptation. Maybe that's not sophisticated, but it works." Professor Zexthal's skin brightened. "Perhaps that is the most sophisticated understanding of all." As Maya prepared to leave the academy and join the Crisis Response Division, she thought about her grandmother's words once more. "We come from a world that has tried to kill us every day for millions of years. And we're still here. Now the galaxy knew why humans were still here, and they were beginning to understand that in a universe full of chaos and uncertainty, the species that had learned to dance with disaster might be exactly what everyone needed. Maya looked up at the stars, no longer wondering if she belonged among them. She knew that humans belonged wherever survival required more than elegant solutions. They belonged in the impossible places, facing the unsolvable problems, proving again and again that sometimes the primitive way was the only way forward.